Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Who can't hear me? You can't hear me? Can we turn it up? Sorry? Yes, you can. Oh, okay, excellent. I specifically asked for the chanting, because otherwise you hear a squeak next to the Buddha, and you don't know whether you're chanting Buddha, Dhamma, or Sangha. Yoso Bhagavata Samma Sambuddho Swakato Yena Bhagavata Dhammo Supatipanno Yassa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Dhampayam Bhagavantam Saddhammam Sasangham Ime Hisakare Hiyataraham Adopite Hiyapipujayama Sadhuno Bhante Bhagava Suchirapani Buddhopi Pachima Janata Ime Sakare Dukata Panna Kata Buddhe Patikan Hatu Amhagam Digaratam Hitaya Sukhaya Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivade Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasa Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namah Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagava sambuddho vichacharana sampanno sugato dukkhavidu Aduttaro Purisa Dhammasarati Sattva Deva Manusana Buddho Bhagava Dhammaham Bhagavantam Abhipujayami Dhammaham Bhagavantam Sirasa Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaniko Ehipasiko Opanahiko Pachatam Ve Dhammaham Dhammam Abhipujayami Dhammaham Dhammam Sirasanam. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yaya Patipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Samiji Patipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yadidang Jatari Purisa Yugali Artha Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaliyo Adutaram Punya Keta Lokasa Dhammaham Sangham Abhipujayami Dhammaham Sangham Sirasanam. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be happy. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, or meeting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as some mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart Should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outward and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being free from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu. Good evening. Are you sure you can hear me? Okay, that's very good. How's everybody? Are you expecting some good answers from the nuns? I don't know. She's an abbot, so if I can't answer anything, I'll pass it on to her. So we'll kind of take turn. Yes? And yes? Any special request? Sorry? Introduce? Oh, that's a good idea. I'm verbal Pasada. We in Dhammaloka they have this Ajahn Brahm 50th year as a monk celebration this month. So they asked our monastery to send some nuns in some Saturdays to help with the speaking and stuff. But then Leha said they want someone that is not usual. So I thought, I'm usual, I can't go. And then the other nun said to me, no, you're very unusual. So there we go, introduced.
And I'm actually quite usual. So and you've all heard me probably on YouTube. I'm apparently YouTube famous, which is very embarrassing. You can't hear me? Oh, my goodness. I don't like ice cream. Okay. So I'm Ven Chanda, and whatever that might mean, these Candas look like that person that people now know as Ven Chanda. And I think the question's going to come in the box, but very briefly, I ordained in 2006 in Myanmar, followed by hearing Ajahn Brahm while still in Myanmar, and traveling on a leap of faith to find him. And then I moved to Perth in 2012, took Bhikkhuni ordination in 2014, and then he sent me to England. And being a very good, obedient disciple, some of the time I actually went to England and have recently opened a monastery there. So that is more about what I've done than who I am, but let's see.
I'm Ven Soma, and I migrated to Australia in 2014. Was a layperson for about 5 years, and joined Dhammasara in 2020. So I'm very junior. I had my Upasampada higher ordination 2 years ago. Yeah, that's it.
You're really easy to please. We already got a round of applause. We can go to bed.
See, Ajahn, I never hear the Q&A that you clap for Ajahn Brahm. I'm going to tell him that, Ajahn, they clap for us. Chanda, you actually have many questions. Maybe you just start off. Yeah. No, you start. You're older. No. Yes.
She means I'm actually older in age. Okay. How do I make peace with someone I have hurt? I get all the emotional questions. It's true. There were a couple of people on the Vens retreat, and one of them, she said, "Oh, don't come to me with your emotions. I'm kind, but I like to empower people. You know, I can't be doing with people sobbing." And the other person who was listening to this conversation said, "Yeah, I'll go to Ven Soma for the sobbing." I said, "How do you know? Why do you assume it?" Anyway, but she's probably right. How do I make peace with someone I have hurt and are no longer on speaking terms with? The memory surfaces quite regularly and is so painful. With kindness. Yeah, so I think the first step in making peace with this so-called external someone and so-called external situation is to make peace with your own feelings. So really bringing it inside and looking at what exactly is happening in you. Like, how do you feel? What are you feeling? You know, can you observe hurt, or is hurt a kind of description of what's happened? Maybe there's something you can actually tangibly experience connected to that. Maybe sadness, maybe disappointment, maybe still some shock, some denial, whatever it might be. But see if you can get a physical sense of how that is in your body and mind, first of all, and see if you can bring some peace to that. So one of the most important things I think I've learned from Ajahn Brahm across the last 15 years or so is to put less importance on what I experience and more importance in the way that I relate to whatever is arising in my body or mind. So if there is sadness, don't worry about it. Don't think, "Oh, I shouldn't feel sad, I'm a meditator, you know, I should just be able to forgive." Remember that word "should" is a kind of red flag, because that's not what's actually happening right now. If sadness is arising, that's due to cause and condition, so it's completely natural. So rather than worry about the object, just have a look at how you're relating to it and see if you can put a lot of tenderness and compassion and even spaciousness in that relationship between you or the so-called observer, which is not really a thing or a person, and that sadness or whatever it is you experience. You might be surprised. You know, it might not be sadness. There might be some anger also. Sometimes we kind of stigmatize anger, especially I think if we're socialized as women. At least that's my experience. I wasn't supposed to feel angry. So only when I was a teenager I started to like really yell and shout and throw things from time to time. Not all the time. But the rest of the time, you know, I think I've always felt that I have to be like a good little girl and, you know, always smile even when I'm really peed off with somebody. So really make peace with your own feelings first in a gentle way, giving yourself time. And if you're in a good mood from time to time, if you're feeling resourced, then you can try to send this person metta. But it really depends how much they've hurt you. I mean, I have an experience where somebody abused me quite seriously, and it was someone I was very, very close to. And she wrote to me saying, "We just have to send metta, we just have to send metta." And honestly, that was the last thing I wanted to do, because I didn't want to replay what had happened in my mind by bringing this person to mind. So I just left it, and I just carried on my practice. And probably 2 years or so after it happened, I was meditating, doing a lot of loving kindness for my best friend, who's a loved person. So she came in the easy category. And when the loving kindness was really flowing, at that time, unexpectedly, this other person just dropped into the flow. It's like they came to mind, but it was almost as though they kind of dissolved into this beautiful flow of loving kindness without any impact. Other times when I thought about this person, it would kind of feel quite racking. I sort of get the dreads in the stomach and, the whole story that went with it. But because I was resourced, I was able to handle it. And that was a very natural way of healing. And actually after that, I could think about this person much more easily. But I made a decision in this particular case not to have contact. Not because, I hate that person. I wish them well, truly. But sometimes, it's just not wise to associate with people who repeatedly hurt us. So really respect your own feelings on this and take it gently. Okay, I better shut up because we don't want to do an Ajahn Brahm in half an hour on the first question.
He's your teacher, so it's okay. You can always blame him. So this one I think all of us can answer. Because it starts with, hello, wonderful Bhikkhunis. Thank you. If there were one thing, lesson, teaching that each of you would say has had the greatest impact on your path to awakening, what would it be and why? Thank you in advance. It's quite hard to just find one thing, one teaching, one lesson. I guess if you start off with more common going to retreats, that kind of route, and then you meet Ajahn Brahm. And I think before I met Ajahn Brahm, a lot of retreats I went to, there's not so much focus on kindness. And there's a lot of focus on going on a structured retreat. And very often, or at least the retreats I went to, then, I was told that you can sit with the pain, and it's good. It's like that's how you advance. You burn off your old kamma. That's wrong, by the way. Just don't ask me why, but it's wrong. You can ask Ajahn Brahm. But it's that kind of attitude. It's kind of you have to discipline yourself. You have to wake up at a certain time, and I'm not saying there's no benefit to that. Actually, it's quite peaceful when everything's so structured and organized. But the one thing that I really felt the difference when I met Ajahn Brahm, or the first time I went to Ajahn Brahm's retreat, was that emphasis on kindness and how you relate to your body and how you relate to your mind, it really supports your meditation, and it also really supports your path. And I was just so grateful that I kind of learned that from him. And he, being how famous he is, that he actually spread that message rather than, it really support meditators and people who try to practice, rather than have this really tense attitude towards your practice. And a lot of the tension, it comes from wanting. So it's actually not beneficial. So that's the one thing that comes to mind. So here you go.
Again, it's difficult to find one thing, so I'll just give a slightly different thing. But I would agree with that, actually, that for me, the heart of the practice is kindness and compassion. But the angle I'm going to come from is making meaning of suffering, because that was what brought me to the path in the first place, this sense that there is so much suffering in the world, and I felt an enormous amount of suffering in myself for no obvious reason in my teens already. And I just wanted to understand the meaning of that. Like, why is there so much pain in this world? Why do human beings inflict so much pain on each other when we already have enough inside ourselves, right? And the weight of that seemed almost too much to bear. But I kind of had this sense that there must be a purpose to it. Like, there must be something we can do with it to make our lives meaningful in some way. And I think the more I've practiced, the more I realize that, right view is the start of the path. And right view is some appreciation of suffering, and that suffering has a cause. So that was the big turning point for me, hearing that suffering is normal, and there's a cause, which means the cause can be removed. There can be an end of suffering. and that then ensues in the 3 right intentions. So for me, looking at what causes the kindness, what causes the compassion, what causes the letting go, these 3 beautiful right intentions, the fact that that is the suffering really helps me embrace the suffering in my life. And whatever particular flavor of suffering I'm experiencing, I have the confidence that I'll then be able to help others with similar things, in a way that's informed. Because I think we can all have some idea about how it might feel in someone else's shoes, but it's not the same as actually, say speaking to a woman who's lost a child, having lost a child yourself, for example. The kind of things that we think of as tragedies can then somehow have a beautiful meaning if they can ensue in that compassion. So I think this is kind of the purpose of the Four Noble Truths, that not just that there's suffering, but that suffering is universal, and that engenders this beautiful response of compassion, which is a universal solution. So I think, for me, the practice, if it's going in the direction of increasing compassion and lessening judgment, lessening kind of, even judgment of pain, right? Pushing things away or, judging other people that I know nothing about, then the practice is going in the right direction. So, yeah.
I guess for me it's the joy and the beautiful smile I see in Ajahn Brahm's face. So I used to work in the Buddhist society for a few years, and I would see him regularly, every week, sometimes a couple of times a week. And it was really nice to see a monk who was smiling, who just laughed, and because it was like, I'm from Sri Lanka. We sort of felt, I can't generalize, this is just me, but I sort of felt in Sri Lanka I had to be really prim and proper and then just say the right words, venerate the right way. But with Ajahn Brahm and the monks and the nuns, it was like so easy. I could just be myself. He would never take offense if I didn't bow down, didn't call him Ajahn or whatever, and just so freeing. And then the respect comes automatically. And yes, so I love that about Ajahn Brahm, and I see that it's a very important part of the teaching and the practice. Because without joy, why? I wouldn't want to be in robes if there's no happiness here. I'd rather be a layperson and be happy. I was happy. So yes, that's the one thing that made a difference for me.
Is that obvious? Well, I just find ones that more relevant, because we may not finish it. Otherwise, can be here for 11 until 11. Actually, there's some really easy one. You actually have a few that's specifically for you, so don't worry, I'll come to you. I can put it back. Dear us, we love the nuns. Thank you for being part of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, Bhikkhuni Sasana. Hey, finish. Okay, so dear Venerables, can you share any teachings that have roused spiritual urgency for you? Stories of personal experience of this. Okay. Spiritual urgency. Samvega. I guess it's just the fact that we'll die. And I guess, even when I was a kid, I was very aware of what that there's death around the corner. How come everyone go about their business as if it's okay? I guess I didn't think of it so consciously when I was a kid. But I guess after university especially, because I mean before going to university I thought, oh, when I get my degree I'll be okay. And then afterwards it's like, well, yeah, and I look at all my friends, they would be, they're doing the usual thing. They get married. I think one got married at that time, and they get jobs, and they have a lot of aspirations to, they want a house, they want a car, and then I just wasn't that meaningful for me. And I just wanted to know why things are just not satisfactory, I guess. And the more I look at it, the more I try. Well, actually, I didn't even want a lot of those things. So the more I actually try to struggle, and it ended up that I just like, well, I don't even know why I wanted to struggle. So that kind of feeling, the sense of feeling lost. And I'm not sure whether I can call it an urgency at that time, but I just felt that sense of suffering and that sense of endlessness. And I have this question, can there be a way? Like, is there anything that it says something else? And the only time that I actually felt that there's an answer was when I met the Dhamma. So I hope that's urgent enough. That's how I felt anyway.
Yeah, so I think I already talked about kind of what brought me to the path in the last answer, because that was about suffering and really wanting to understand why there is so much and what we can do about it and how to live in a compassionate way. So that led me to India at the age of 19 on a one-way ticket. A bit reckless, but actually it turned out to be very good fortune, because there I did hear about the Dhamma, and I did my first meditation retreat about a year later. And by now I'd travelled a lot and been to all these full moon parties and trekked up through the Himalayas and had all the kind of experiences that I was really never allowed to have in England. And I was kind of sick of it, actually. I thought, there are no answers outside, and I just want to know what's going on inside my mind. So I was particularly looking for a really strict retreat where I wouldn't have much escape from myself. And I found a retreat like that in Thailand, actually, first of all. And just hearing the teachings, had me in tears, because it felt as though everything I'd always sort of intuited to be true was being put into really clear words. And it was the kind of stuff I'd always been trying to articulate and tell my parents and kind of, ask questions about. And no one had understood what I was talking about. And suddenly, the Buddha's teachings were just answering all those questions for me and giving me a path. So I think there was an instant urgency, a sense of urgency, if you like, but more a sense of really knowing that I found my path and making a commitment to follow this path for the rest of my life. So I was quite lucky, because it doesn't always happen in the first retreat, but for me it did. So, and I had no ticket home and no responsibilities, which was really great. So I just carried on living in Asia and working a little bit where I could and doing a lot of meditation and also serving on retreats. And it got to the point, I don't know, probably just 2-3 years into my practice. But certainly as I carried on, and I was practicing as a layperson for about 10 years before ordaining, that I just didn't really want to come out of the practice. I kind of didn't have the same interest in the world anymore. So whenever the retreats would end, and even this time, when Ajahn Brahm said, should we carry on for 9 years? I was like, Yeah, seriously. You know, when you renounce, you kind of renounce because you've given up the world. So I just wanted to keep going inside. And I just realized I was losing my interest in the world. Not in a way that was like, oh, really negative towards the world. You know, I was fairly integrated. I could still talk to people and, you know, found a lot of meaning in helping other people. But it was just this sense that I wanted to keep digging, you know, I wanted to keep going inside in this process and find out how far I can take it in this life. So that's what I'm still trying to do, with a few distractions like a monastery to build.
I guess for me, well, all of the teachings, the more they sink in, the more a sense of urgency arises. But one particular thing, I mean, I just started following Buddhism properly here in Australia. And I remember one day, I just migrated here, and I was just helping out at somebody's office. And it was this thing of, oh, I hope my working days will increase. You know, let's say if it was one day, it's like I'm thinking, oh, it'll be 2 days, it'll be 2 days, it'll be 2 days. So, you know, the whole day I can see that this is what I'm thinking. And then when it became 2 days, oh, I hope it'll be 3 days, I hope it'll be 3 days. And I remember getting off from the bus and walking home, and suddenly I realized, this is not going to stop, is it? First it was 1 day, any job. Then it's 1 day, then it's 2 days. Now you got 2 days, you want 3 days. It's never going to stop. When is it ever going to stop? So, yeah, that was one of those moments. I think the teachings brought about a certain kind of awareness in me, and I saw something. So, yeah.
This is a women question, so if the guys don't want to listen, that is okay. No, I'm not prejudiced against any gender. You're welcome to listen. Is it true that when women have their periods, they're not allowed to go on 8 precepts or perform holy tasks or duties? If yes, why? Well, it's not true. It's definitely not true according to the monastic code. But it is true that especially in the past, well, not just in the past, probably in certain places now, the practice of the Dhamma very often mixed with cultural practices and their understanding, and so their ideas, they also incorporated into how they practice. So especially in perhaps more reserved areas. Do you know anyway? Yeah. I certainly heard of it. I personally never encountered a place in India. In India, maybe. I suspect even, I don't know, in my mind there may be other places as well, but I'm personally not familiar with it. So this is certainly not something that written down in the text as something that we need to keep for the nuns. Just to clarify that. Okay, you have one of the Venerable Chanda one. Actually, these two are quite similar. They want you to explain, just say something about your monastery, Ajahn.
I think you're just really happy you're not an abbess, right? What is the mission of Anukampa Grove? How do you envisage it evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? Why Oxford? That's a lot of questions. Could you please give some information in relation to staying there? Length of stay, wait list, how many residents volunteering? Thank you. All right. The mission. 10 to help women, but all people take steps towards awakening and hopefully go all the way. So this is always the overarching aim, I think, of any Dhamma center, any monastery. It's to help people have the supportive conditions to take this spiritual path as far as they can, according to their own potential, but also because conditions are so important. In fact, they're really everything. And the reason that developing a Bhikkhuni monastery is so key is because there are not many Bhikkhuni places where there are those conditions in place. And yes, we have a building which is beautiful and it's secluded, it's quiet, it's accessible from the city of Oxford, but it's also in a very peaceful rural location. But the building is not the monastery, right? The monastery is the people that will come and practice. And at the moment, I'm the only resident Sangha. In fact, I'm the only resident. So it's not really a community yet. So the first aim, in a sense, is to actually attract longer-term people. And to, out of those people, hopefully, some of them might actually develop the aspiration, or maybe they're already exploring the aspiration to ordain. I think when I started, it was certainly for the sake of having more places for bhikkhunis and also having, obviously, somewhere for me as well, because there's nowhere for me to be in England. But another kind of very important related aim, or maybe it's just happening on its own, is that I feel we reach out to all marginalized communities in a really beautiful way that I don't see happening so much in monk-only monasteries. And I think that has to do with being fairly marginalized. Actually extremely so in England, being the only bhikkhuni living there. So it's very lonely because I'm not actually part of a Sangha, but I'm not a layperson either, right? So, and the main Sangha, unlike here, don't support bhikkhunis. So there's a bit of a kind of, not sure we should go too close, And it takes a lot to bring people in in our aims. So what I've noticed is related to what I said about suffering and compassion is that I have much more sensitivity, and I'm not saying I understand, obviously, what it's like, say, to be in a black body or a transgender body or whatever other marginalized community you might come from. But I certainly have a lot more sensitivity towards the dynamics at play and how the way we show up is entirely conditioned by the support that we get or we don't get, right? The messages that we've heard from our parents, from our societies, from even other people in our communities. So I'm really, really pleased that we are developing a very inclusive place. And we had one trans woman stay with us who was actually not coming out as trans female at that time, but after staying with us, decided that they felt safe enough to start using their pronouns, which was she. And I was just so not proud, because I don't own the community, but we don't have a good word in English to say it. I just felt delighted, I suppose, mudita for the community and for this person, because everyone was not only accepting, they were actually very happy to welcome this person. So that's become another kind of important aspect of the project for me. The next 5 to 10 years, it's impossible to say, because Ajahn Brahm and I, when we started, Ajahn told me, in a couple of years, you'll probably have a monastery. And it took 9 years. And still, it's only one nun. So now I don't really think in terms of time. I just think that if the next generation of women coming after me have an easier time, then my job is well done. Even if I'm remaining the only nun there, on a positive day, I think, never mind, it doesn't matter, because we've now got a facility, we've got a place, and we've got a beautiful community internationally, really, I would say. So even though there's nobody long-term there, people keep coming, and they're really, really good people. Like, we get to know each other, they get to know each other, which is very, very satisfying indeed. So on to the next question, length of stay, wait list, etc. I think I've got one person on a list to ordain, but I don't know how serious she is. I have to get back and find out. She's coming along for 3 months next year, so that's, a qualifying 3-month stay. And there's another person coming also for a longer period. But, out of everybody who comes for a longer period, you might get 1 in 10. I don't know, how many people. It's such a specific calling. And to find the right place, a good dynamic with the one resident Sangha member, and to really feel that this is somewhere I want to, spend my life in robes, at least for the first 5 to 10 years, it takes quite a lot. So, yeah. We only have 5 bedrooms, so that means, say if I got suddenly 3 people wanting to come, I'd probably have to spread them out a bit, and they might not all be able to come straight away. We have to have space for lay people. Length of stay, if you're coming from overseas, negotiable. Also, if I know you, negotiable. Usually it's 7 days, first day. And then volunteering, yes, especially if you can be there, because we have so many remote volunteers. But what it means is that I spend nearly the whole day on the internet, and whenever I'm not online in conferences or Zoom meetings or emails, then I'm meeting the people who I'm actually one-to-one with. So I need more people with me. That'd be the best volunteering. But anyway, if you do want to volunteer, you can approach me tomorrow. You never know.
Yes. So if you want to ordain, then meet her tomorrow. I'm serious. Okay, is there anything lacking in Buddha's teachings from women's perspective? Anything missing from the Buddha's teaching? Is there anything lacking in the Buddha's teaching? I don't think for the Buddha's teaching itself, not really. The way the Buddha taught, he already has the vision of the fourfold Sangha from the beginning. And but maybe after he wasn't there anymore, then things have changed a little bit. So then in certain places, the way they practice become less opportunities for women. And so that sense of lack, a lot of the time it comes from those cultural situations and context. You want to add something to it? Yeah? So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, whether you're monks or nuns, you all lack hair. And you kind of all wear the best fashion that lasts for 600 years. So we're lacking bad taste. Okay. So this one can be for all the nuns. Dear Bhikkhunis, thanks for your presence on this retreat. It has been inspiring to me and my meditation. What is your favorite thing about the Dhamma, if you can just pick one? Thanks. Huh? This is about the Dhamma, not Samvega. What's the other one?
I think we had that one.
It's similar.
She said kindness, I said suffering.
Oh, okay. Is it similar? Is it answered? I thought it was slightly different. I can answer it, then you can ask the verbal Chanda one. There's so many verbal Chanda one, it's excellent. One thing about the Dhamma. For me, I guess, is that taste of truth. And I remember Bhante Sujato said, however much he tried, he really tried for all the time he has been a monk, ever since he met the Dhamma, and tried to disprove the Buddha, and try to question and have critical thinking. And it just, however much you try, it just, that I mean, there are, of course, there's like transmission that have problems. There are things that maybe people have mispresented the Buddha over the years. But it's just that when it comes to the essentials, when it comes to the core teaching of the Buddha, it's just that ring of truth. It's just hard to move away from it. It's not that I don't appreciate other teachers' teachings. I learn a lot from other teachers and even lay teachers or lay people in general, the experience. But it's just that ability to articulate the Buddha's experience into words and explained by kind of monks and nuns who really understand those teachings. It's just that sense of truth is just extremely touching for me. So, you want to say something about that? Something about the Dhamma? Or you want the Canda question? It's about the Palestinian.
Oh my goodness. I told you I get the tricky questions. Wow, okay. I have Palestinian and Lebanese friends who are unable to turn away from conflict. What is something I could say to them that aligns with the Dhamma? Also, when they ask, where is the Buddhist voice? Yeah. One of the things I would probably say straight away is that I can't possibly understand what they're going through. You know, we can't understand what it's like not to feel safe in your own country, right? Not just not to feel safe, but to actually see your loved ones being just ruthlessly killed, you know, and without any prediction, without any predictability. It's very difficult to say anything that's going to, that's going to reassure them. Unable to turn away from conflict. It's very difficult because if you're not in that conflict, whatever you say might start to sound a little bit preachy. I would be more inclined to ask them how they are and what it is that they would need from me and how I could listen in a way that might give some relief in some way. And maybe gently encourage them to reflect on how they're pulling together somehow through it. Because in times of conflict, sometimes people's goodness comes out, you know. Even with the political situation in the world now, I mean, I heard about it, and I suppose most people did. And, you know, some people might disagree that it's such a disaster. But I think it's really up to us as to how we respond. And my first response was, well, that means we have to give out even more kindness and even more hope to other people, right? Because we can't all sink into despair. And one of the really important things in the Dhamma is the importance of wise association, or if you like, spiritual friendship. That doesn't only mean, you know, seeing monks and nuns or reading the Dhamma. Sometimes it can just mean avoiding too much association with really draining kind of news. You know, when you put the television on and you see all this talk about terrible things and, you know, all these people who are starting the next war and all the rest, you're associating with those people, right? You're bringing them into your house, you're bringing them into your mind. So be very, very careful about that and see if you can actually focus on the goodness all around you. I mean, this is going off topic a little bit, but I guess for me as a bhikkhuni, and especially, you know, starting a monastery, one of the most touching things about this life is that really we only survive, we're only here because of people's kindness. Like our lives, the very fact that we can live this life is a testament to the fact that there's so much goodness in the world. If there wasn't generosity, if there wasn't kindness, if there wasn't sacrifice, then, you know, we wouldn't have anything to eat, right? We wouldn't have anywhere to live. But instead there's an outpouring of support for people who are on the right path. So I don't know if you can somehow share some of the goodness of your life with these people, send them a lot of compassion. Metta's probably not the right approach. You know, you can't say, may you be happy to somebody who's obviously not, but you can say, may you be free from suffering, may you be safe, you know, may your family be protected, whatever it is, you know, may this soon end. And I think just be a wise friend as best you can by modeling those qualities rather than, trying to give advice. But maybe that's because I really wouldn't know what to say. I don't know. Maybe you do know what to say. It's very difficult. Yeah. When they ask, where is the Buddhist voice? There are some Buddhist voices. I know that Bhikkhu Bodhi is quite vocal about most of the conflicts in the world and the inequalities in the world. There was somebody, who was that? There was a lay group, and I forget who they are now, but they had a whole newsletter about the Palestinian cause. And I don't remember. Yeah. You can find it. There is stuff. I mean, maybe you can Google stuff and send it to them. I think in the Theravada tradition we don't tend to be that proactive in terms of a voice unless we're in leadership roles and we're invited to kind of interfaith dialogue or conflict resolution or something like this. But we're all working in different ways to support people in this world, right? Everybody. We all have different jobs. You might look down on some jobs and say, oh, this person's just a bus driver, or this person's, not doing anything particularly important. But every single job we do, no matter what it is, can be a way of expressing kindness, compassion, bringing hope to people's lives. So whatever it is, just, keep your heart open. And the other thing is, I think we have to be really open as practitioners to facing difficult emotions and not always having the answers to things. Because we can want to sort of feel like we know what to say to these people, but actually we feel very vulnerable ourselves, right, when we're faced with other people who are suffering. So I think it's about contacting that place inside us also and having a lot of compassion towards it, just being able to hold space for ourselves and for the other. Anyway, I don't know, do either of you want to add something to this? I don't know if that's any good.
Do many lay Buddhists have children? Ask the lay Buddhist. Do many of you have children? How many of you have children? Okay, see, many of them have children. Is having children just more wanting that ends up leading to more suffering? What are your thoughts? Well, the thing is, many things we do have some kind of wanting. Have you noticed? Have you ever want to go to toilet? Does it lead to more suffering or less suffering? So it's important to notice that in the Second Noble Truth, the suffering that leads to the craving that leads to suffering is the craving that leads to future rebirth. Yes? So it's craving that really enhances your sense of self. And so you have to find out for yourself, like how much of having children is it having a child that you want to help another person in this world to live a beautiful life? Or is you just want him or her to carry on your business, to carry your family business, or whatever, yeah? Or, a lot of time, it's just pure mistake, which is... In that case, is of course you don't want to harm a life, yeah? There's many different choices. So, of course, I'm not here to tell anyone what to do. And I don't live your life, I don't have all the answers for you. but I can give you the criteria that the Buddha gave. It's like, if it's something that, if you pay attention to what you actually want, the quality of it, and what it is, you just ask yourself, does it lead to suffering? And it would be true for your case. It's not for somebody else to judge you. There are people who want to ordain, there are people who don't. There are people who want a relationship and some people who don't. And some people, it almost inspires some people to have children. I mean, I never felt that way, but it's not for me to judge people who feel that way. So, look into whatever it is, whether it's having children or something else. Just pay attention to it. When you have that wanting, is it leaving? You can feel it. You can feel the how you feel in your body, how you feel your heart. Is it leading to suffering for me? Yes? Then you can make the choice, that kind of choices for yourself. Yeah. You want to add anything? Have you have children? just wondering. All the teddy bears are they perhaps have children as well. Okay, so now it's a democracy. You can choose.
Is there a specific way to find out what is preventing one from entering deep meditation? Thank you. Yes, you just practice the path and you find out which are the weak path factors. This is why we don't enter deep meditation, because the path factors aren't sufficiently developed. It's that simple. The whole of the Eightfold Path, or at least the first 7 factors, are a support for deep meditation. Whatever you mean by deep meditation. But presuming you're talking about the 4 jhanas, then that is the 8th factor of the Noble Path. So this is pretty much always what's not really preventing, but just we've not yet matured to that extent that the jhanas become natural. So it's not that there's a problem there at all, it's just that we need to deepen our practice in other ways. And this is the beauty, actually, of the end of a retreat. Not that it's ended yet, but it's not only about meditation. If we don't actually practice right speech, right action, right livelihood, right intention, all the rest of the path, but those ones in particular we can practice in the world, so-called world, outside, then we don't really have much of a hope of taking things more deeply. And even if you do go more deeply in your meditation, and then, there are flaws in your precepts and, or even flaws in the way you understand, say things like the 4 Noble Truths and right view, then that deep meditation either won't last or won't have the power to actually lead to the awakening experiences. So it's always a kind of holistic picture. We develop each and every factor, and that reinforces all the rest. Another way, I suppose, that you can find out what's preventing, if you like, I wouldn't talk about it so much as preventing, because it's not a given, right? We're not entitled to these things. It's more like a kind of, I think of it almost like a grace. I mean, that's the wrong word, because it's a sort of Christian word and it's not coming from our higher being. But I think of it more as like when we actually surrender, our kind of wants, our ego, our kind of expectation on why isn't it happening for me? I've done blah, 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 now X, Y, Z should happen. It's then that we have a chance of actually sinking into these things. So, but another way of figuring it out, if you like, is to look at the antidotes to the hindrances. Ajahn Brahm was talking about hindrances today. And if you can actually get wise as to which hindrances are your main kind of guests, which ones keep repeatedly turning up in your mind, and then start to understand a little bit about their antidotes. And I think for most people, maybe it's just me, but I'm guessing it's others, usually it's a kind of aversion or kind of fault-finding mind that is the problem. even if we do get a beautiful nimitta, we say, oh, it's really nice, but it moves. Or, oh, it's lovely, but the colours change. Or, oh, it doesn't quite stay still, Or it only comes occasionally. It's always the faults we look for. So I think metta meditation is really, really key to success in deep meditation. It also has the advantage of overcoming fear, because it gives you this beautiful inner resource of kind of well-being and ease and spaciousness, softness. And that makes it much, much easier to sink into these deep states of mind. So we become more embracing of them, we become more welcoming of them, less suspicious in a way. Sometimes we just don't trust our minds enough. We need to give our minds a lot more love, a lot more respect, in order for them to really feel at ease with us, right? Because most of our lives we've pushed our minds around. So I think loving kindness for me is a really huge help, and I often practice quite a lot of loving kindness before allowing the breath to come up. And sometimes, it's not even necessary to kind of morph into breath meditation. The metta just builds, and that's, a really powerful, beautiful state. So I don't really, I think the longer we practice, the less we expect these things to happen, in a sense. We realize we're really in it for the long run. And they're just kind of outcomes of certain causes. It doesn't really matter when or how. The main thing is, how are you practicing, and are you practicing and developing more compassion, more wisdom, more beautiful ways of relating to yourself, to other people, etc., etc. And, these are the important measures of whether your practice is going in the right direction. I have to share, because I always share this, but my first teacher, Goenka, who, I'm incredibly grateful to, because that was my entry into the Buddhist practice. And even though he does have some Jain-like kind of views about burning off your kilesas or your sankharas or whatever, which might not be really true according to the Buddha's teachings, still, it had great benefits for me. And one of the things he used to say is that there's only 2 ways to measure your progress. What do you reckon? Jhana? Enlightenment? He said it's a feeling of gratitude and a feeling to serve others without expecting anything in return. I think that's so beautiful. So sometimes it's that, actually, that can be lacking. This, we get too obsessed with me and my practice and how deep my practice is going and how quickly and all the rest. Think about someone else. Go and serve on a retreat, Go and give something to someone. Do charity work, whatever it is, Actually deliberately put aside your own kind of aims, especially spiritual aims. It should be a bit of a red flag when you get a bit desperate, And then start thinking, okay, I need to think about others, because we're all in this together. We're all stuck in this boat, right? And trying to sail this sea of suffering with all its storms. And, we really have to look out for each other on the way. So, all these things will help. I don't know if that's really that wasn't very specific, was it? It was actually very general. Do you want to add anything?
Thus all thoughts, including unintentional thoughts, makes kamma. I've heard the Buddha saying, Chedanahang bhikkhave kamman vadami. This translates to, this is the wrong translation, okay. Thoughts are your kamma. It doesn't mean that. Cetana means your intention. Yes? So it's not just any thoughts. So if this is the case, with your translation, are we making kamma with every single thought, regardless if the thought is intentional or unintentional? So I think I answered that. Yeah. So that phrase you quoted from the Buddha, it means cetana means intention. So it's not just any thoughts. It's when you have the intention, then it directs your action. That propel the results. Yeah? Or anything?
Yeah, just the intentions are usually either wholesome or unwholesome. But there's many shades of grey in between, right? But in general, like, there's an ethical quality to the intention. So basically you want to be on the virtuous side. So, for example, in the, is it the Dvaita Vitakka Sutta, I think Majjhima number 19 in the Majjhima Nikaya? The Buddha basically says that, you know, the thoughts of loving kindness, thoughts of non-cruelty, and thoughts of letting go are wholesome thoughts. So they're creating good kamma. And the opposites, thoughts of cruelty, thoughts of, I suppose, selfishness, right? The opposite of letting go. And thoughts of harm, cruelty and ill will, yeah. And thoughts of, is it? How do they describe the opposite of nekkhamma, sankappa? Greed, I suppose, isn't it? Is it thoughts of greed? Yeah. The opposite of that, yeah. I mean, I think the opposite of letting go is kind of possession, identification, greed, you know, those kind of things. So they have obviously more negative kamma. But it's not that every thought will determine your future. It's not that we have to go chasing after every single one, but it's more the case that we want to try to incline our mind increasingly towards the wholesome. That's the idea. But essentially, I think all thoughts do have some sort of kamma in the sense that they are sankharas. So it's really only when the mind is still, and really still, Ajahn Brahm would say in second jhana, that the kamma actually stops there for some time.
Well, when thoughts, when they're unintentional, they're not directed, they kind of like white noise. So they can't cancel each other. And also, like in the suttas, the Buddha, when he talks about kind of kamma, that the importance of kamma, very often he's talking about a kamma that leading to certain rebirth in a certain realm. So that is important to refer to is actually intentional kamma. Intentional intention. So, I mean, of course, you know, every action has some kind of effects, but whether it's effects that actually affecting your rebirth, and that's the most important thing that in terms of kamma. Yeah. So, you want to choose one? You can choose this as well. You can.
How's everybody doing energetically? Good? All right, excellent. Is the human realm the only realm that one can learn? No, that one can parinibbana from, okay. That one can parinibbana from. Or can beings from the heavenly realm also parinibbana, please? Keep up the great work. Thanks, we've been just sitting on our bum for the last 9 days, but I suppose that's good work, yeah. So, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's not very common that people parinibbana from here either, right? Because most people are not at that point yet. And certainly from wherever these anagamis go, that's where they parinibbana. So anagamis are people who have already attained, or I don't know, I don't like that word attained. The third stage of enlightenment is basically the non-returner. So there's no more greed, there's no more ill will, and they're not going to come back to this human realm. So they go to, I think, the Suddhavasa or something like this, and there they are extinguished. There they are extinguished is a good way to say it. From the heavenly realm, I'm really not sure. I know that there can be stream winners in the heavenly realm. I'm not sure if they usually become stream winners in the human realm first, which is easier because there's more of a contrast of suffering and happiness, so it's somewhat more motivating to practice. And I think, I don't know about this, but I think it's probably more likely you're going to hear the Dhamma in this realm. at least from Ajahn Brahm. I don't know, maybe he speaks to the Devas as well, but we've got a lot of good teachers around, so we're really fortunate right now. From the heavenly realm, can they just parinibbana from there? I'm actually not sure, but I do want to share one sutta I was reading earlier today, because it sort of fits, and I really like it, and it's called Inopportune, and it's in the Anguttara Nikayas. It's in the Book of Eights, number 129, I hope, and it's really lovely, because in there it's talking about what an amazing opportunity it is when there's a Tathagata in the world, when there's a Buddha or the Buddha's teachings, alive in the world, and we have an opportunity to come in contact with the Dhamma. But then it says, if there is a Tathagata, a Buddha in the world, but we're reborn in hell, or in the animal realm, or even in the heavenly realm, it's actually not a good opportunity. So that's very interesting. And the other reason I wanted to mention it is because another one of the unfortunate circumstances is that when there's a Buddha in the world, and all the teachings are available, we're born in a place kind of far away from people practicing the Dhamma, and specifically far away from bhikkhus, lay women and lay men. That's the fourfold assembly. That becomes an inopportune time. So I really like that, because it's really pointing out the importance of having the full assembly of these four groups of people in order to practice the Dhamma. And I think the other ones are like, there might be a Tathagata, but somebody has a wrong view, or there might be a Tathagata, a Buddha, but somebody is not intelligent or wise or astute, so they can't pick up the Dhamma. And then, of course, there's the opposite one, where you have everything, all the good fortune, but there's no Buddha's teachings. So I don't know about these other realms exactly, but what I do know is that in this realm, we live in an opportune time, and this is the opportunity we've been waiting for probably for many, many lifetimes, many, many eons. And I mean, if we could only realize that, we'd probably give everything we've got to practicing in this lifetime, right? Because we just don't want to keep going forever through birth and death and loss and war and grief and bereavement and so many terrible things that can happen. And we've got the Buddha's teachings now, so if you're actually living in a place like Perth where you have a really flourishing fourfold assembly, you have got it made. It's just the most fortunate circumstance you can be living in. And if you haven't got that, go out and create it. If there are no bhikkhunis, go out and ordain or whatever, or join a bhikkhuni monastery. And make sure these teachings continue. So anyway, I'm going to ask Venerable Pasada what she thinks about beings from the heavenly realm gaining cessation there. What do you reckon?
I think they can. I think they can. But I can't remember detailed sutta or quote anything. So, but since you're in this realm, then get cessation from here. It's recommended. Yes. If you're in the Deva realm. I mean, the suttas you have Sakha, who's a Deva, and he would come down and talk to the Buddha and listen to teaching and stuff. And some of them you don't know how how true it is for those particular stories. But I think certainly from the thing is with heavenly realms, it's just they're so long. So and it's so pleasurable. So sometimes they just like too caught up with enjoying themselves. And like the Ajahn Brahm mentioned example of Gatikala, is his name? Yeah, he told the story of Jodhipala and his friend who grabbed him by the hair to take him to see Kasapa the Buddha. And he was actually a non-returner. But if that story, I don't know how authentic it is, honestly. But if that story is true, then if I mean, honestly, I don't know how authentic that story is. But let's say if that's authentic, Jyotipala then was actually in the same life with Gatikara, I think that's his name. And so Gatikara became a non-returner. So he's still there, because one life lasts so long, while like Jyotipala can continue and by practice and become the Buddha already. Yeah. So, but as far as I understand, I think you can get nibbana, parinibbana from the heavenly realm. But certainly the human realm is a very fortunate place for practicing the Dhamma. Satisfactory? Very good. Oh, this one is so small, so I have to stand up for it. I mean the size of the paper. Are trees or plants sentient in any way? I hope not. Are they involved in the cycle of rebirth? Nope. Can you be reborn as a plant? What kind of plant do you want? Huh? Those of you come from overseas, you're looking at like, I really want to be a gum tree. No, plants and trees, they don't have consciousness. But in the time of the Buddha, there's understanding. There's understanding that plants and trees and also the earth, they believe they have consciousness. And the Buddha kind of didn't take up that idea. Okay, so I don't believe so. But if you have the aspiration, I don't know. Maybe it will happen. Yeah. Maybe all the iPhones can become a gum tree. I mean the website. Gumtree is the website. All right. Okay. Wait. You want to choose one of these? Oh, okay.
Please help me understand what I am. I'm really sorry, I'm going to crush you now, because you are not. Okay, understand what I am. So I think in probably the Thai forest tradition at large, and maybe some other mystic traditions, there's this question, who am I, going around. People really want to get to the heart of that. Who am I? So this is what you're asking, I think. Or what am I? And Ajahn Brahm realized the kind of mistake in that question a long, long time ago, because that assumes already that you are something, right? So you're already having a conclusion there, and you're just trying to kind of prove your own theory. So he was very smart and decided to reframe the question as to, what do I take myself to be? Which is a much more interesting question, and it's much closer to the way that the Buddha taught. So my favorite parts of the Buddhist texts are in the Samyutta Nikaya, and I was thinking about this today, like, why are they my favorites? It's really the Nidana Samyutta, which is chapter 12, the Canda Samyutta, chapter 22, for any nerds, and the Salayatana Samyutta, number 35, because they are basically all about causality and about trying to basically say what this thing is. So the Buddha determines what this is, or let's say described it in its entirety as the 5 components of existence, the 5 khandhas. So basically there's body, there's materiality, right? There's flesh, you can touch it, it's real, it's solid, it's matter. And there's feeling, you can feel something. Yeah? And then there is sankhara, which Ajahn likes to translate as will, but I prefer something like formations or fabrications or volition in a way. And that is the kind of reacting part of the mind. And then there's sanya, which is perception, that which perceives, and consciousness. And basically that's it. So if you want to follow the train of this thought, what do I take myself to be? I actually did this on the walking path this rains for like several hours. And I'm not really one for a lot of kind of verbal reflection, but this time it really worked for me and my mind became really peaceful. And it was quite insightful for me because I went through each and every one asking this question, like, am I the body? Is the body mine? Am I in the body? Is the body in me? And all that seemed very ridiculous. So then feeling, okay. Am I feeling? Is feeling mine? And straight away we start to think, yeah, I feel, right? I'm feeling sad. We say, I am sad, because it's me who's sad. We identify very closely with that. And the same thing, I did this in the case of all these components of existence until really it looked fairly impossible that there could be any self in any of these, or that these could be inside a self. And it became clearer, not to the level of, stream winning or anything like that yet, but it did become much clearer, and I think it can do if we keep plugging away with this, that we're just sort of superimposing this idea of a being on these 5 khandhas. And again, I remember my first teacher saying something really nice. Somebody asked him, well, okay, so there's feeling, but who feels? And his answer was, feeling feels. So you can do that also, right? Okay, who perceives? It's perception. Perception perceives. Why do we assume there's something else involved there? And usually it's because we're just bringing all that together and we sort of think that we're an amalgamation of all this. But if you actually take each one apart, then it's really hard to find a self. You can do the same things with the senses. It's like, am I sound? Is sound me? Or am I the ear? Do you think you're the ear? I don't know. Do you think you're your nose? But, it sounds silly, but then I started thinking, yeah, I am identified with taste and smell, because I think I like this smell and not that one, and this taste and not this, and this is something to do with who I am. And it's really remarkable how we identify with these things and create this sense of a personality, with all these attributes. But you can see in your own life how that changes and how it's conditioned by, the culture you're in. When I was in India, I loved all the Indian food. Now I can't eat any of it because of my gastric issues. So it changes all the time. So rather than take it from the Buddha, I would suggest really exploring in this way. And again, changing that question, not worrying too much about what you are, but what do you take yourself to be? Because that is where the suffering arises. It's those areas you're still identifying with that cause the pain, especially when they change or when somebody criticizes them. I don't like your feelings. I don't like your sanya. Because we think it's ours and we think they're really, telling us we're stupid or whatever it is. But, all these things are conditioned. So, yeah, I don't know, is that scary? To me, it's kind of a relief. Not to take yourself or your life quite so personally. It brings a lot of freedom and a lot of creativity too. Because then you can play, you can kind of experiment with different ways of looking at things, different ways of perceiving, different kinds of feelings that sometimes you say are bad or unwanted. Try and open up to them. Maybe there's something interesting there. So, anyway, that's plenty, I think, on that.
A few years ago, someone at BSWA told me that a member was suffering from dementia, and she believed from too much meditation. That's obviously not true. My question is, our meditation reduce the chance of developing dementia? Okay. My question is, I guess it means, whether meditation reduce dementia. Reduce developing dementia. I believe so. Well, dementia is like losing memory. So if you sati, meditation, the suttas is samasati. Yeah. So sati very often is translated as mindfulness. So when you have good mindfulness, good sati, that's when you have good memory. The Buddha said to a Brahmin. The Brahmins, in those days, they remember a lot of their hymns. Yes? Anyone know that sutta? Yeah? So the Brahmins, they have to recite a lot of the sacred texts. And so the Buddha was talking to him. And then the Buddha said, like, when your mind doesn't have the hindrances, the Ajahn Brahm talked about the hindrances today, then that's when you can remember your hymns, even when you learn it from a long time ago. Yes? But if your mind is like, the hindrances is very active in your mind, then even something you read yesterday, something you tried to remember yesterday, you can't remember. And as Ajahn just said this morning, when the hindrances subside, yes, that's when the mind becomes brighter and brighter, and that's also when your memory. The thing is with memory is, if you can encode something very clearly into your mind, then you can decode it very clearly out. So a lot of the time when we're not mindful, when you're not present, then you don't actually allow the mind to keep that encoding of whatever you experience right now into the mind. So when you try to decode it, then you can't remember. So so that's what I think. Yes. So good memory is usually, like, if you listen to some of Ajahn stories, he talked about when he was a kid, he has very good memory. And one of the things he talked about is like, because his mind is always so silent. When the teachers are talking, he totally just absorbing everything. And afterwards, he just can remember. You want to add anything?
I might be a bit controversial.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's controversial really, because I think that's all true. But I do doubt that that's the full picture, because I think, I'm not a doctor, but my understanding is the brain is what's affected in dementia, not the mind so much. So I think it's possible to be a good meditator and still get dementia. I think it's probably true that it's less likely, but there are dietary factors, there are lifestyle factors that are involved, there's hereditary factors that are involved, and I think sometimes it happens, there have been great spiritual teachers that, were almost stigmatized for starting to become forgetful and cloudy and confused, because people say, oh no, but that would mean that they weren't a good meditator. People would think that meant that they're not a good meditator, and maybe they thought that too, but I think that's wrong. Because some of these people were really developed in their practice, but it was in the later stages of their life, for whatever reason, that they started developing this. And I think probably as human beings have started living longer, and probably living almost too long in a sense, we have to start declining at some point. So I would question whether it's so much a question of memory related to the mind or a brain disease. I don't know, because I'm not a doctor. I think the two might influence each other to some degree, but I think eventually, the body gets sick and dementia is still possible. I get to pick. You want one? Okay. Okay, if there's no self, who or what gets enlightened? That's easy, and I'll just be quick. Avidya gets enlightened. Avidya becomes vidya, basically. That means delusion becomes wisdom, that's all. Or you could say suffering ceases. Because these 5 khandhas are basically what the Buddha described as suffering. So that's what gets enlightened. If there's no me, what would motivate someone to follow the Noble Eightfold Path and get enlightened? Well, what does motivate you? You're here, right? So have you lost all interest? Compassion, I think, is the motivation. And simply the end of suffering, happiness, joy. It doesn't mean that because, what we experience is not a self, that we don't still experience it. There's still happiness, there's still suffering. It's just that we appropriate that and think this is my happiness, this is my suffering. There's still feeling. The problem is we say, oh, it's me that's feeling. That's where the suffering is. So obviously there's still a natural inclination to free ourselves, or to free this process, let's say, from suffering. And I think that's one of the beauties of the Dhamma. It's one of the reasons people do meditate, because they see that by meditating, suffering lessens. And we, fortunately, are usually not masochistic as the human race. I mean, depends how deluded we are, I suppose. But generally speaking, all beings incline to happiness. The Buddha says this. He says, all beings seek happiness and recoil from pain. And that's in the gradual training. Right at the beginning of the gradual training, it's an aspect of right view that then leads into these beautiful right intentions, into this compassion that wishes to free not only ourselves, but all beings. And also we have more compassion for others, because we realize, okay, we can say, this is you, you look this way, you're like me, you're not like me, or whatever. But when we see they're just processes, the same as us, and, every person experiences unpleasant feelings or, emotional distress, then it's really easy to have compassion. It doesn't matter what the package is. Basically, everybody is just comprised of these 5 khandhas, and whatever we experience in ourselves is the same thing is experienced by others. There's only a certain kind of remit of feelings that are possible to have. And I think my service on about 60-odd retreats, not odd retreats, but about 60, serving so many people, mostly throughout India, but also across a lot of Asia and also Western countries. It just showed me that the human mind is the human mind, We all go through emotions and experiences that are identifiable to each one of us. There's no difference, in a sense. Difference is quite superficial. So the motivation becomes those 3 right intentions, which Ajahn Brahm actually describes as motivation. So it's the loving kindness, compassion, non-cruelty, and letting go, or letting things be, in order to understand. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, right. Well, because you don't read it before. If the chanting is to help brainwash us, that's Ajahn Brahm's idea. Why do we chant in a language not many understand? Ask him. Also, thanks to you all for holding this retreat. Ajahn Brahm, actually. What a joy it has been. Excellent. The chanting is to brainwash you. Well, ideally it's nice to learn the meaning of the chanting. Yes? And that's why, I think Ajahn makes a point of chanting the Metta Sutta in English. So then people actually understand and they can connect to it. So, and when you actually read it's not that hard. right? The first part is revealing the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. And they are very, they are how the Buddha himself praised the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha in the sutta. So the qualities and the words that he chose, is that they're very beautiful. So if you can get a translation, I don't think it's that hard. I think those are bilingual, right? Yeah, then if you chant it in Pali, then please also read in English. Then it can help with the brainwashing. It'll work better. Yeah, that's my recommendation. Anything to it? You're brainwashed. Okay. Oh, no, it's your turn.
Oh, this is a long one. It's Ajahn Brahm. Oh my goodness, I get all the hard ones. You can just... No, I take what I'm given. All right, contented and easily satisfied. If I don't do a good job, then I'll pass the buck. Ajahn Brahm says that jhana is necessary to achieve enlightenment. Yet in the suttas, Candā was enlightened when listening to the Buddha's first sermon. Ananda was enlightened while lying down to sleep. In the Jatakas, many lay disciples were enlightened listening to the Buddha's talks. So what supports the view that jhanas are a prerequisite for enlightenment? Well, the last bit is easy, because what supports this view is the whole of the rest of the Buddha's teachings, which is the gradual training and the Eightfold Path, which includes the jhanas. So whether it's a prerequisite, but it's certainly a natural part of the journey towards enlightenment. So that's a better way to see it, I think, than, oh, I must do this in order to blah, blah, blah. These things will just happen along the way. So there's no need resisting them either. You know, don't push them away because you think they're not necessary. It will just happen when the time's right. And sometimes for some people, I believe, from speaking to Ajahn Brahm across many, many, many years, it might be quite soon afterwards, you know. For some people, it's years and years and years of jhana practice, and it might take a long time to, to cease, let's say, or to say break through to stream winning. It doesn't really matter, but the point with the other part of the question is that we don't know what these people were doing beforehand, right? The suttas only capture that final moment of their enlightenment. So you can pretty much assume that all the path factors came together at that time. And I think there is a little bit of ambiguity around whether jhanas happen or are a natural part of the process towards stream winning. There is room in the suttas to suggest that it might not necessarily be. So different teachers will have their opinions on this. Even Ajahn Brahm does sort of say in one particular case where there were these assassins and they became stream winners really quite soon after attempting to assassinate, was it even the Buddha they were attempting to assassinate? I forget. He says that one does cause room for doubt in his mind, whether they would have already been practicing jhana. But the thing is, who knows? Maybe people have been doing this in previous lives too. But certainly, what's really certain is that at the moment of stream winning, the hindrances have to be absent, right? So even if it's, not the full jhana or the emergence from the full jhana, it should at least be what they call upachara samadhi, which is a state where the hindrances are absent. It's either right before the jhana or right after. But Ajahn Brahm always says go for the jhana if it's available, because the extent to which the hindrances are knocked out after a jhana is much greater, much deeper, and it lasts longer. So the mind's a lot more stable and penetrative at that time. So I wouldn't get too disillusioned by this. Just presume that this is a natural part of the practice. And, these things will happen when the causes are there for them to. And I personally really, I guess because I came in contact with the Dhamma in Asia, I felt like I didn't get a watered-down version. I got really deep teachings from the beginning. And even though there are maybe some flaws in the way that Goenka teaches, it's limited to some degree. Still, the goal of cessation and the end of all suffering was very, very clear. You know, I never thought that this was a partial path or that, you know, there's a happy heaven realm of original consciousness or whatever. I was always pretty clear and pretty relieved to know that everything could end. So one of the things that really attracted me to Ajahn Brahm as a teacher is that I could recognize that what he was teaching was the same that all my teachers in Asia were teaching, that, you know, not taking out anything from the Buddha's teachings, not taking out the jhanas. It's quite normal in countries like Burma, where I ordained, that people are practicing these things even as young children. You know, my own preceptor is an example. He was ordained at the age of 5, and by the age of 16, he was sitting for 3 days in meditation. No toilet, no water, just sitting. 3-day stretches in deep meditation. So this happens, you know, and I think it's dangerous to assume or to think that we can skip things, or that basically when we think we can skip things, or when we kind of try to renegotiate the true definition of a jhana, it often means we end up diluting the rest of the path as well. You know, if you already think that when you experience piti sukha, that's the first jhana, then what happens when you get a light in the mind? You'll probably think that's stream winning, right? So this is how the whole thing gets diluted. And the point is not that, oh, we're saying you're not a stream winner. The point is you won't get the benefit. You won't experience the full freedom from suffering that's available. So if there are teachers teaching something deeper, it means something deeper is possible for us. It means these things are, you know, if you want, I mean, this is Mahayana speak, how to say, they are, it's not like they're inside the mind, but they are available to all of us who practice the path. So, am I going on a tangent? So just don't worry about it, honestly. There's so many ways to practice, and no matter what you're doing in your life, you can always be practicing one or the other aspect of the path, and it'll always be more than one at once, hopefully. Right intention as well as right speech, right intention as well as right action, simultaneously with the view that beings suffer, that's why we must be kind, etc., and then developing the wholesome states, keeping some amount of mindfulness throughout the day, and keeping some sense restraint as well, like really guarding your senses and noticing how we respond to sight, sound, smells, taste and touches with negativity or with, you know, greed or whatever it is, and just see if you can protect your mind, really get to know it and keep it kind of tidy. And then when you do have chance to practice in the evening or the mornings, whenever you do get time for formal meditation, then you'll find the mind is actually already in a pretty tidy state. So just enjoy the practice. Don't worry about what's needed, just do it. Just do it. What else?
Can you please explain why one should have their right shoulder towards the stupa when circumambulating it? Is this in the sutta? There's some kind of mentioning in the sutta. It didn't instruct us to do it, but it would have description of people visiting the Buddha, and they would have this kind of custom of bearing that shoulder, the right shoulder. I guess it's just customs at that time, and and I guess we still, we still have this shoulder with the rope on the other shoulder. But I think it's just, when you have one big piece of cloth like this, and if you want to move your arms, you have to somehow expose one of the shoulders. So they just have a custom for that. That's an easy one. I can find another. I didn't do it. You can choose me one. You can choose me one. I want some interesting one. I don't want a difficult one. Don't mix it. This joy. Yeah. It's 9 o'clock, by the way.
Okay.
Sorry. Ooh. I've heard the Buddha gave different kind of meditation methods to suit individual personality and their past practices. This has helped those people attaining realizations faster. Can this be done today? If yes, how? Yeah, of course, it can be done. If yes, how? Well, the thing is, the teacher give you those practice, they kind of have to know you, you know? So either the teacher, the Buddha, he kind of just knows. But sometimes, I guess the teachers nowadays, they're quite busy. They may not spend that much time trying to figure you out. So it's always good that if you have faith in some teacher, if you can spend some time with them, you can ask them. Like once they actually get to know you, just ask them. Like, is there some good practices for me that you think? And sometimes it may not be, rub this cloth. Then you rub away all your defilements. That's one of the stories from the sutta. But sometimes they can just point out that, maybe you tend to rush around too much. Slow down a little bit. Yes, they're all like advices that may be very, very clear from someone else's eyes. But if you don't want to wait for that, actually people around you, they're constantly giving you feedbacks. It's very specific for you. If you're willing to listen, if you're willing to open your hearts, and sometimes it may sound like criticism, but sometimes it just, they may be having a bad mood, but they may be giving you advice that's very useful for you if you just pay attention. Yes? Want to add anything? No? Okay. Last question from Venerable Chanda.
Do you think that knowledge, the art, can one day become a new way to enlightenment up to some 2,500 years progress? What? Do you think that knowledge, the art, can one day become... I don't know what that means. But... Okay, can I do one more after this? Because I'll just give a quick answer, because I don't really understand the question. Become a new way to enlightenment up to some 2,500 years progress. The only way that can really take you to enlightenment is always going to be the Eightfold Noble Path, basically. And however you practice that, that can be... I don't understand what you mean by that knowledge or that art really means. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it properly. There are many ways of being creative with the path. So, knowledge is part of it, art can be part of it, right? Whatever is helping you to increase wholesome states. But the thing about the Buddha's teaching that is unique is really the right view. For me, this is what differentiates it from every other religion or every other kind of teaching. Because I do think there were people in ancient India practicing jhana, most probably. But it wouldn't have been Samma Samadhi, because Samma Samadhi includes the other 7 path factors. It includes right view, it includes right motivation, etc., etc. So it is the right view. It's the fact that suffering is basically everything that we can possibly know arises from a cause and can cease. So the Buddha wasn't beating around the bush. He wasn't saying there's, anything worth kind of striving for, or there is no... Maybe this sounds really negative. I'm just putting it in really negative phrases now because I'm a bit tired. But to me, this is incredibly positive. Basically, all suffering can cease completely, and that's the difference. And also that everything is non-self. So in other religions, for example, maybe Hinduism or some other religions, I don't know much about other religions, to be honest, so I might be wrong, but it seems that they're saying, yes, much of it is non-self, but then there's this ultimate self, right? There's this kind of ground of all being, or there's cosmic consciousness, which is permanent and eternal. And the Buddha's saying, even that is conditioned. So that's still not the end of suffering. And that's wonderful, because we don't want to get stuck anywhere, right, on this path. We want to just keep going. So that's the main thing. So we need the whole Eightfold Path. And whatever can fit into that, as long as it is in alignment, I suppose that can be part of it. I don't know. Is that okay? I'm a bit tired. Shall I do one more? Or yeah, shall I? Why can you be ordained temporarily in Thailand but not here? This is a great question, because we can then talk about conditions again. The thing is, in non-Buddhist countries, we don't have the same amount of support. The other thing, of course, is that the climate's incredibly different, so we need a lot more to exist, to subsist. So in Asian countries which are Buddhist, I mean, even in India that's not Buddhist, you can probably, live as a sadhu for sure, like you can live as a recluse of some kind and just go wandering around and live under trees and live by the Ganges, and, nobody has to look after your every need. You can beg for food. And it's the case also in many Buddhist countries. You can always go on alms round with your alms bowl, at least if you're a monk. For women, it's sometimes not safe. And it's not because there's anything deficient in women, but because some men make it unsafe. So we're not able to do that. And maybe not only men, I don't know. And I'm not saying all men, but it's not safe, mostly. So because of that, there are just more resources in countries like Thailand. There are bigger monasteries, more support, etc., more bhikkhunis or bhikkhus to do the ordinations. And over here, part of our job as monastics is to actually help to create the supportive conditions in the first place. We're actually setting up the structures that don't already exist. So in my monastery, I already work from 7 in the morning till about 11 or 12 at night every day, which is crazy, and nobody would choose to live like that, including me. And so I can't then bring in somebody who requires me to look after them because they're already reaching the end of their life. It would be just impossible, and I would die and collapse, and the monastery would have to close, and it simply wouldn't work. So we need to train people who can help at first, in the beginning of the sasana, to develop these monasteries and support systems and, get a stronger sangha first of all. And then, if we ever get to that sort of stage, perhaps we can do temporary ordination. I myself was ordained for 3 months in 2004 because I was still in the middle of my degree, unfortunately, which I only did because until then there were no opportunities to ordain. And as soon as I started studying, the opportunity came along. It was amazing. So I took 3 months in my summer holidays and ordained with my first teacher, the one who sat in deep meditation at a very young age. And it was great because one thing is, I would have carried on anyway, but I had to come back to finish my degree. But it was very clear that nothing would stop me going back. And I think, if you can take that step, even just for maybe more than a couple of weeks, but even a couple of weeks, it's like you've crossed some kind of threshold. It's not easy to get to that place in your life, even for a couple of weeks. You've got to kind of explain it to people, you've got to have the time off work, you've got to shave your head and not look like you anymore, and things like that. So it's not easy. And once you do it, I think it becomes easier the next time and the next time. It's a renunciation. And, everything on this path is a process. It's not like it all happens at once. You train towards these things. So the more letting go you can do, the more likely you can let go fully eventually, not only by ordaining, but also by letting go of this whole mind-body phenomena and the identification we have towards it. And in true Ajahn Brahm style, we will now let go of you and wish you a very good night. And sleep well and look forward to practicing metta with you tomorrow, my favourite part of the retreat. You want to say anything?
Sadhu? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have a good night.